On today's show, welcome back, Kevin Durant, and the Reed Sheppard era officially begins with him staying in the starting lineup. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Fridays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our shows to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down the Rockets' 129-101 win, blowout win against the Utah Jazz. Welcome back, Kevin Durant. Rockets offense certainly looking a lot better with KD back on the floor after his little 2-game hiatus. We'll talk about the official start of the Reed Sheppard era with him staying in the starting lineup upon Kevin Durant's return, his defensive impact in this game, and just his general growth on that side of the basketball. Thompson's playmaking, Alperen Şengün leading the way in scoring and closing out the Jazz in the fourth quarter. A lot to get to from this one. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, $5 only. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to check them out. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. 129-101 blowout win for the good guys against the bad guys. Yes, they are the bad guys. It's the Utah Jazz. They will forever be the bad guys. Look, this Rockets team is just, they're a juggernaut, man. Like, this team does exactly what a championship caliber team is supposed to do. And they just walk in and beat the doors off of any team that isn't a super highly competitive team. And that's what you want to see, right? You want these games to more or less be tune-up games, to be able to fine-tune some of the smaller things that you need to prepare for teams like the OKC Thunder, like the Denver Nuggets, right? The actual legitimate other competition, the other contenders that you're going to be worried about dealing with at some point down the line. And with the reinsertion of Kevin Durant in the Rockets lineup, look, they were still able to win those 2 games against the Suns and against the Warriors without KD, and those were really impressive wins without KD and missing other key contributors as well. But adding KD back, right, is what truly unlocks and elevates this Rockets offense, right? The Rockets offense went back to looking, back to form, looking like the NBA's #1 offense, or I guess technically they've slid to like #2 now, but went back to looking like the high-octane offense that we've seen for the better part of this season with Kevin Durant back out there on the floor, right? He's the piece that when he slots in, and the addition of Reed Sheppard to the starting lineup, mind you, just made everything look so seamless out there. Kevin Durant, 25 points, 10 of 14 shooting, 3 of 4 from downtown, was a perfect 2 of 2 at the charity stripe, had 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Felt like he was everywhere defensively in the first half, but who wasn't? Maybe it was less KD being everywhere and Keyonte George giving the basketball to everyone in a Rockets jersey in the first half. Keyonte George, 0 points, 8 turnovers, 0-6 shooting. He was under the weather or sick going into this game. So, and Keyonte George is a really talented young player, but he was not having a very good game against the Rockets in this one. But look, getting Kevin Durant back out there, right, just to be the tip of the spear offensively for the Rockets, having that go-to cheat code in the half court, being able to rely on his gravity to just make life easier for everybody else on the floor. That's what you get when Kevin Durant's out there, right? And sometimes it can be hard to quantify that, but then when you look at a game like this and how easily the Rockets put up 129 points in this one, and it could have been way more had they not basically played almost an entire quarter of garbage time. I think garbage time started officially around like the 9-minute mark of the fourth quarter when Alperen Şengün got subbed out. So, I mean, the Rockets could have absolutely run up the score quite a bit more on the Jazz had they needed to in this game. But that's the benefit of taking care of business early as a contending team, right? You want rest for your star players. So Kevin Durant only having to play 30 minutes in this game is huge. This was a talking point that we brought up in the offseason, right? Talking about Kevin Durant, 37 years old, keeping him fresh for what you hope is a really long postseason run. This is the way you do that, because you're going to need KD to play 35 or 40 minutes against the good teams, against the Thunders and the Nuggets of the world. But what you don't need is Kevin Durant playing 35, 37, 40 minutes against bad teams like the Jazz or the Wizards or the Pelicans or something in order to eke out a regular season win. And so this is what good teams do. Right? They bully the crap out of the bad teams, and they come away with these really comfortable wins where they're able to get some rest for their key players. And in addition to just getting Kevin Durant back in this game and how much he just truly elevates and unlocks this Rockets offense, it was also I can't say addition because he was already in the starting lineup, but Reed Sheppard staying in the starting lineup. We'll talk about his defensive impact in this game, but offensively, right? We've talked about the spacing that Reed Sheppard provides for this Rockets team, and it really does feel like this is the best 5-man unit for the Rockets out there. What they ran out as their starting lineup in this game: Reed, Ime, KD, Jabari, and Şengün. This 5, they all play so well off of one another when they're out there together. And I think you can look at the assist totals from this game to paint the picture of how well they functioned offensively off one another. And at one point, they finished the game with 46 made field goals on 30 assists. At one point, it was like 41 made field goals on 30 assists or 29 assists or something, which is a really good number. Like that, I mean, basically assisting on approximately 75% of your made shots is huge. And what that shows is that the Rockets were moving the basketball incredibly well, in particular with those 5 on the floor together. Kevin Durant, 4 assists. Jabari Smith Jr., 3 assists. Alperen Şengün, 5 assists. Thompson, his playmaking was really impressive in this game. 9 assists in this one. Reed Sheppard, 4 assists. And what it shows is it wasn't just, Sengun or KD having to ISO and take over the game by themselves, right? This Rockets team was attacking as a collective group. They were attacking as a 5-man unit. They were moving the basketball around. Other guys, it wasn't just Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün creating for the other 3 or 4 guys on the floor. It was the other guys not being afraid to put the ball on the floor, attack, drive, swing the ball around. And sometimes it would find its way back into the hands of Kevin Durant or Alperen Şengün for them to finish off a play that they started. And the Rockets offense continues to look very, very polished. And now that they've got Reed Sheppard, what feels like permanently in the starting lineup, to be able to kind of iron out any of these kinks and really work on how to get the best versions of KD and Alpi and Ime and Reed and Jabari all playing with one another. That's what this next, stretch of this Rocket season is going to be. It took us a little over a month before Reed Sheppard kind of forced Ime Udoka's hand to include him in the starting lineup. And now this next stretch is going to be figuring out how to get the best versions of all of these guys now that they're all playing starters levels minutes and starting with one another at the beginning and ideally end of each and every game. Coming up, do want to talk about the impact of Reed Sheppard defensively and what him being in the starting lineup does for everyone else, in particular, Thompson with his role as a playmaker in this game. Plus, we'll talk about Alperen Şengün closing out the Jazz in the 4th, as well as other impact contributors from this game. Steven Adams and Aaron Holiday big off the bench. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and even Texas. Look, this season, I've been getting in with Prize Picks, looking at Alperen Şengün, and when I hit him for the more on his points, rebounds, assists so far this season, he has paid out quite a few times this year for me. So you can get in on the action as well over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. I didn't even get to mention, I had it in my notes, that one little transition layup that KD had where he like faked out the defender and then scooped the ball directly into the rim looked a little, shout out to Ackerman on the broadcast, said it looked a little Harlem Globetrotter-esque, a little curly kneel to his game in that one. Just KD out there putting up the easiest 25 points of his life against a very lackluster Jazz defense. But let's talk about the Rockets defense for a moment here, because one, the Rockets defense finally feels like it's locking in. They're up to number 2 defensively in the game. Number 2 offense, number 2 defense, number 2 in net rating. Trailing, you guessed it, the OKC Thunder. But this Rockets defense is starting to look like the Rockets defense that we have grown to know and love over the past couple seasons. And we knew it would take a little bit of time, right? For all the new faces to acclimate, for guys to kind of start settling in, and for the chemistry to kind of pick up, and guys to start getting, accustomed to how to function and play off of each other in the zone, how to understand, how guys are going to rotate and who's going to switch, and, how to cover for certain guys. And the next big hurdle for this Rockets team is going to be, the inclusion of Reed Sheppard in the starting lineup. As good as Reed has been offensively, right? And as impressive as he has also been defensively, right? Teams are going to target Reed Sheppard. Teams are going to look at him as the weak link of the Rockets defensively. And now these next, 4, 5, 6 games against easy opponents is going to be a great opportunity for Ime Udoka to scheme and try and figure out different ways to protect Reed Sheppard, or figuring out how the other guys can situationally be in the right spots to, make up for, anything he lacks on the defensive side. I feel like I'm dumping on Reed. I'm trying not to, because it's just the reality of the situation. Other teams are going to try and target him. He's holding his own defensively. He's doing a fantastic job. Like, he has grown so much on that side of the ball in such a short amount of time. Like, in this game in particular, there were a couple drives where he just like walled off and didn't give up and eat. Like, he's not getting beaten off the dribble as much as he was even just a month ago. His hands, you knew that he had these lightning quick reflexes, and that he had these great hands capable of, causing deflections and steals and getting little strips and blocking shots, and, all these different things that he can do defensively that we've seen flashes of in the past. And it feels like he's starting to put it all together a little bit, to where now he's understanding more or less where and when to gamble, where and when to make a recovery play, how to switch defensively, how to call out his own scram switches. That's going to be a really big one, because there are going to be moments where Reed gets stuck on a bigger, stronger player, a taller, longer player, whatever. And you don't want to just willingly accept those mismatches if you can help it. And, it's different because Fred VanVleet, also an undersized guard, Fred's packing a lot more muscle, right? He's a lot stockier than Reed is, so he can kind of hold his own on some of those switches. Reed, not so much yet in his career. And so there were a few moments in this game against the Jazz where Reed was caught on a switch. There was one that he was caught on, I believe it was Filipowski on a switch, and it would have been a really easy post up for Filipowski. And instead, Reed was able to, before Filipowski got called into the picture to come set a screen, Reed was able to scram out of that matchup with Jabari, who was guarding somebody else on the wing, a smaller player. And Reed was able to call for his own switch and basically telling Jabari, hey, go get Filipowski, because that's a bad mismatch for me. And there were like 2 or 3 moments like that throughout the game where Reed was on a bigger player, had to call for a scram from one of his teammates off the ball, and that teammate acknowledged it really quickly and was able to get back to that man. And so those are going to be those small wrinkles that the Rockets have to treat a little bit differently with Reed defensively in the starting lineup. But now that it's happening, now that Reed is permanently in the starting lineup, they're able to iron these things out now and really work on it to where a month from now, a couple months from now, it'll be second nature. They'll just know, hey, if Reed gets switched onto a bigger guy, the onus is on one of us to pick up that bigger man, to scram him out, right? So that it's not just Reed looking for the scram out opportunities, but all 5 guys are aware, hey, this is what we need to do as a 5-man defensive unit to be at our best out here. But you're seeing like the deflection, the stocks were crazy, man. Reed had 4 steals, matching his career high at halftime. Didn't wind up being able to add breaking his career high or adding to his career high. I should say exceeding his career high in the second half. He had that one pass that he almost stole that he bobbled out of bounds. And then he had the block on Lauri Markkanen, which I don't think that they credited, because he could have finished with he finished with 6 stocks, 4 steals, 2 blocks. He could have finished with 7 or even 8 stocks in this game had he not bobbled that one pass and had they actually credited him with the block. Or maybe they did go back and credit him with the block on Lauri Markkanen, and maybe that's why he has the 2 blocks. Either way, I don't know how he got in and blocked Lauri Markkanen on that inbounds play, but he did. And Reed, his impact defensively in this game, right? You're feeling his impact. And I think what you're seeing too, at least in this first game, right, rotation wise, is Ime is keeping Alperen Şengün and Ime Thompson attached together, and he's keeping Reed Sheppard out there anchored with the Kevin Durant lineups. So KD and Reed basically played almost the entire first quarter together, and then Alperen Şengün and Ime Thompson checked back in, held down the fort while those guys went to the bench. And that feels like the substitution pattern that Ime went or is starting to go with. We'll see if he adjusts that moving forward. But for Reed in the starting lineup, right, a bit of a quieter night offensively for him, just 9 points on 4 of 8 shooting. But this will be the thing, is now figuring out, right, how to levy the gravity of KD and Şengün to get Reed some more opportunities offensively. But now you've got 2 gunners out there with Jabari Smith Jr. and Reed Sheppard, guys who are not afraid to let it fly from 3, guys who are going to provide the much needed floor spacing for the Rockets star players to operate. And now it works even better with Ime Thompson when he does handle the basketball, which he handled the rock a lot in this game. And even though Ime Thompson didn't have a great offensive performance in this one, only 2 of 8 shooting, 5 points, he racked up 8 rebounds, had 9 assists, and did have 3 turnovers, but overall was really solid when it comes to facilitating the ball in this one. Did a lot with his driving kick game, even just simple little passes out on the perimeter, right? Making the right simple read, but the ball was in Ime's hands a lot. And when you have the additional floor spacing from Reed Sheppard out there, it doesn't feel as bad when Ime Thompson is initiating the offense, because you can't help off a Reed. You can't help off a Jabari. You're not going to help off KD. You can't really help off Şengün. I mean, other than, you're running a quick pick and roll with him and the big man's going to stunt for a little bit. It's just, the Rockets offense feels a lot more whole when Reed Sheppard is out there, and it allows all the other guys to slot in more perfectly into what they want to do. And this wasn't a game where Reed ran a ton of the offense, right? The ball was in Amen's hands quite a bit. Reed handled the rock a little bit, but it also gives Ime Thompson the luxury, right, of having Reed out there and being able to play back in, his dunker spot, back in the corners, playing off ball. There was one really good play where I believe it was Reed. It might've been Şengün. It was one of them. I think it was Reed though. And Ime Thompson set a really good down screen on Kevin Durant's defender, and whoever it was, Reed or Alpi, I think it was Reed, flipped KD a pass on the perimeter for a wide open 3-pointer. Being able to use Ime Thompson in those other ways off the ball, instead of having him have to be the guy walking it up and initiating offense, is such a benefit. And they can tag team the responsibilities, right? Some possessions, it's better to have Ime initiate. Other possessions, better to have Reed initiate. And you don't have to just dump all of those initiation reps on Reed Sheppard's shoulders now that he's in the starting lineup. You can kind of ease him into that and maybe go back to Ime Thompson being more of that dynamic secondary playmaker, but still having plenty of reps between those 2 guys to be able to, kind of, I guess, work through the kinks in their respective games offensively, because we know what it looks like when the offense flows through Alperen Şengün, right? That's when the Rockets offense is at its best, when it's flowing through Alperen Şengün. And if they wanted to win every single possession, every single game, they could just do that every single time down. But that's going to be super duper predictable, and that doesn't raise this team's ceiling enough to where they have a variety of different ways that they can attack you offensively, right? That's why you see the ball in KD's hands. That's why you see the ball in Amen's hands. That's why you're going to start seeing the ball more in Reed Sheppard's hands, because they want different ways to attack you, so that come playoff time, teams can't just key in on Alperen Şengün and be like, oh, well, if we take LP out of the game, then Rockets offense is dead in the water, because it's exactly what happened to the Rockets this last go around. Is they did their best to try and take LP out of the game. Well, they took Jalen Green out of the game, and then all that was left was LP. But they want to have a diversified means of attack this season. And you're starting to see that, and the Rockets are going to have to continue to grow and work on that as we progress throughout this campaign. Coming up, I want to talk about Alperen Şengün's big night, 27 points, 10 of 15 shooting, as well as other final thoughts from this Rockets Jazz matchup. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as guys heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown, scorers, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. You know, the Rockets had a couple plus 33s in this game, which was ridiculous. Reed Sheppard plus 33 in his 31 minutes of run. And then Jabari Smith Jr. plus 33 in his 27 minutes of run. And for Reed, went through his stat line already. For Jabari, 15 points, 5 of 8 shooting, 2 of 5 from deep, only 3 of 5 from the free throw line. Only a couple rebounds, 3 assists, a steal. But the thing about Jabari, and man, like he's moving differently this season. Like he really does. Like he just looks so different. He had that one possession, and granted, again, Keontae George sick, under the weather, whatever. He locked up Keontae George on that defensive possession, forcing the turnover, and then Rockets recovered the ball. I forget it. I think it was a Kogi who pitched it ahead to Jabari. And then Jabari just running like a 1-on-3 fast break, just like kind of weaving through a couple Jazz defenders, and then didn't slow down, just went all the way to the rack like he'd been doing it his whole career. And his finishing and his confidence when it comes to putting the ball on the floor is so dramatically different this year. And I'm sure a big part of that is the confidence being instilled in him from KD. KD looking at him and being like, dude, we're built the same. You can do some of the same stuff I could do, right? And then coaching him up on some of that as well. But he just looks like a different player this season, man. Like, and the fact that his 3-ball is now creeping up towards that 40% mark, right? It's been really consistent for him this year. He's been a knockdown shooter for the Rockets, and he's been doing it on good volume as well. Just loving what we're seeing out of Jabari Smith Jr. Great defender. Offensively, you know, there's going to be nights where he has quiet games where he's not as big of a focal point offensively, but he's turning into and developing into an incredibly reliable release valve for this Rockets offense, for KD and Alpi to have, you know, reliable kickouts to. Love what we've seen out of Jabari Smith Jr. For Alperen Şengün in this game, right? Mentioned it early on, but Will Hardy electing not to double team for God knows what reason. Probably lottery odds. But 27 points, 10 of 15 shooting for Alpi. Missed his only 3-point attempt, with 7 of 9 at the free throw line to go with his 4 rebounds, 5 assists, had a steal mixed in there. Had a couple turnovers. I'll be honest, when watching live, I thought he turned the ball over a little bit more than just the 2. Maybe there were some moments that like he didn't get fully credited with the turnover. Maybe it was somebody else who passed it to him and then they got credited with the turnover or something. But outside of that, I mean, it was just a very quietly kind of dominant game for Alperen Şengün. Like I remember at one point you looked up and, you know, he had 10 points and it was like, how did he even get to the 10 points? It wasn't a super loud performance, but it was efficient. It was exactly what the Rockets needed to see out of Alperen Şengün. Hopefully kind of him shaking off any of the potential personal drama stuff that was happening outside, you know, of the game. I know there were some commenters who like disregarded that and said it wasn't a big deal. It was a vocal minority back home and you know, for other, like, a vocal Turkish minority or something. It is what it is. Let's move past it. You know, anyways, it's good to see him playing a game that we know that he's capable of playing, right? Just dominating down low, dominating inside. And the really impressive part about this game was the personal, like, it wasn't I guess a personal 8-0 run, but just the 8-0 rip that, I guess I keep calling it 8-0, the 8 points in a row that he scored at the top of the fourth quarter. Josh Okogie opened up the top of the fourth quarter with 2 points at the free throw line. And then Alperen Şengün just ripped off 8 straight points, just bucket after bucket, then hit a couple free throws, then another bucket. And it was those 8 points that basically like ballooned the lead back out to like almost 30 plus or somewhere thereabouts. And it gave Ime the confidence to be like, all right, get out of the game, right? It's game over. It's garbage time. And that's what you want, right? You don't want to mess around with these teams. The Rockets did kind of mess around a little bit there in the third quarter. At one point, the Rockets lead slipped all the way down. They were leading by comfortably like north of 20 for most of the quarter. And then their lead slipped all the way down to, I think the Jazz cut it to like 13. It was either 13 or 14, kind of midway through the third quarter. And then the Rockets kind of buttoned up and they're like, let's actually start taking care of business again. And then that's when they built up the lead and it ballooned all the way up to, 30 something. But, that's what you don't want to see happen with these bad teams, is you don't want to give them an opportunity to sneak back into the game to where then it's like, oh, all right, now you got to dust off your starters and you got to put them back out there and they don't get the rest and they've been resting on the bench and now that, they're out of rhythm a little bit. And you don't want to ever give bad teams that chance. I mean, hell, the Rockets we're not that many years removed from the Rockets being one of those bad teams that was scrappy and wanting to claw for every single win they could get their hands on just because you never knew when the next win was coming. And, that's the last thing you need, is to give a team a little bit of that confidence to where they can steal a game from you. And the Rockets have been really good so far this season about closing out the bad teams, right? Not messing around, like foot on the neck, just ending it. And that's where I think having Alperen Şengün and Kevin Durant staggered like that, right? Alperen Şengün, it was his job to take care of business there at the top of the fourth quarter not only so that he could get his rest, but so that KD didn't have to come back in the game, so that the rest of the starters get their rest. And he did his job, went out there, 8 straight points, and Ime Udoka was like, all right, pulled the cord. Garbage time. Everybody else, stay ready, crew. Get in there. Carry us to the finish line. And I think that's just really important for this team to be able to continue to do throughout the season, to keep their starters preserved, to keep guys fresh as we navigate through the rest of this year. Elsewhere for the Rockets, Steven Adams was awesome, continues to be incredible for this team off the bench, was a plus 24 off the Rockets bench, had 13 points on 4 shots. 13 points on 4 shots. At one point, Steven Adams had, I believe, all his points, if I'm not mistaken, at the free throw line, and he went a perfect 8 of 8 to start the game at the charity stripe before finally splitting that final pair. So he finished 9 of 10 shooting at the charity stripe in this one. And he had what was easily the play of the game, the block on Bryce Sensabaugh, who tried to go up. And Bryce Sensabaugh's had, he's had a couple nasty posters against the Rockets. He had one earlier in this game, and then he had one against the Rockets in preseason. And Steve-O was like, all right, I've had enough of this. Blocks Sensabaugh at the rim, just completely just erased his attempt at the rim. And then comes down on the other end in transition, receives the pass, does a little whirl in the paint, and then just totally hammers it over Filipowski on the other end. And he kind of hangs on the rim afterwards too. A little showboating from Steve-O. And the Rockets bench was loving it. I mean, my goodness, they were going crazy over that play, that back-to-back sequence. Easily the best sequence of the game. Easily, and you could argue whichever one's better. I mean, which one is better in your eyes? Was the block on Sensabaugh better, or was the twirling dunk and the poster on Filipowski better? I honestly can't decide which, because Sensabaugh looked like he was out for blood again, trying to attack the Rockets, the Rockets rim, and Steve-O had just gotten tired of it and was like, no, this is not happening. So anyways, I was very impressed with Steven Adams in this game. He's awesome, continues to be great for the Rockets off their bench. 12 rebounds in his 17 minutes of run, so a double-double for Steve-O off the Rockets bench, Steven Adams now leads the NBA in net rating. It was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for a while there, and Steven Adams was flirting with being in the top 3, top 5. Steven Adams now leads the entire NBA in straight-up net rating per game, and that's how impactful he's been. Is when Steven Adams is on the floor, good things happen for this Rockets team. And that's why the Rockets try to get him out there as much. That's why they try to run him some minutes where he's the only big out there. That's why they try to run him with the double big lineups at times. It works really, really well when Steven Adams is on the floor. Also, shout out to Aaron Holiday. 11 points, only on 3 of 10 shooting. He was letting the 3-ball fly. He's continued to tank his percentage a little bit, just 3 of 10 in this one. But he's also really invaluable to the Rockets from a floor spacing perspective. And I think we're seeing that a little bit more. Ime Udoka kind of adjusting, and he's still relying on Josh Okogie. Josh Okogie's still very much a staple part of this Rockets rotation defensively for what he, for how he impacts the game on that side of the floor. But I think you're starting to see the Rockets rotation settle out in the way that it's going to once the Rockets do get fully healthy, right? Once they get Tari Eason back, once they get Dorian Finney-Smith back, you're probably going to see Aaron Holiday and Josh Okogie be slowly phased out of the rotation. Although I would imagine that Aaron Holiday still has, some spot minutes to be played here or there, even if it's just like 6 or 7 minutes in the first half of a game, kind of like what Clint Capela does occasionally. But you're seeing Ime Udoka starting to prioritize a little bit more the floor spacing, right, with Reed Sheppard and Aaron Holiday, as opposed to the defensive side of things with Josh Okogie, which they needed it to start the season as other guys were getting up to speed, as the guys were developing their chemistry on that end. But now that the defense feels like it's kind of starting to lock in and all the guys are on the same page now it's about trying to prioritize how do we get the best spacing out there? How do we get the best version of this offense out there? And Josh Okogie's turning back into Josh Okogie a little bit, right? The 3-ball hasn't been as hot as of late, but at the same time, he's still really impactful defensively, still a really good piece to be able to have to throw out there on a night-to-night basis. Overall, good win against the Jazz. They're going to run it back one more time Monday night. I want your thoughts. What stood out to you about this first win against the Jazz? Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. What was your favorite play of the game between Steven Adams' block and the dunk on that same sequence? Which one did you think was more impressive? Give me all your thoughts on this one in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.